Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the UCL Humanitarian Summit 2022. I'm Dr. Ahmed, a lecturer here at UCL Institute for Risk and Disaster Reduction, and I am co-organizing this event with Professor Ilan Kelman. So as you can see, today's topic is about climate mobility. We want to investigate further what does it mean by climate change and how it links to people's decision on migrating from one location to another, and also a vast majority of them stay in the major climatic hotspots. So before I start, I want to talk about some facilities today here. First, the drinking water facilities. There's a drinking water just on the right if you go outside this door, and plastic glasses are there for you. Second, about the toilet is again just on the right. Please, you can use the back door there anytime. Please remember the fire exit there. Please see the signs and symbols. And lunch will not be provided, but there are lots of restaurants and hotels nearby. The Tottenham Court Road is just 2-3 minutes walk that way. The main street, there's an open street market, and lots of student facilities are here for lunch. And hopefully you'll be back again at 2 p.m. So let's talk about the program. So we'll go straight for an hour right now. So I will introduce our keynote speaker, and of course, the inauguration would be done by Professor Peter Salmons. And hopefully we'll finish it in 50 minutes now, then we go for 10 minutes short break, and we come back for the panel one. That's more interactive. We will take some questions from the audience, and we'll try to make interactions with the speakers. Followed by we go for lunch break, that's 90 minutes, that's also networking. And then we return to this room at 2 p.m. And then we go for panel 2 that would be led by Professor Ilan Kelman. And after that, we finish sharp at 3:30. We go for 1 hour networking with our BSc students and our partners. There, tea, coffee, and some nibbles will be provided. So before I start, I want to welcome Professor Peter Salmons. Please, would you mind come here and take your seat? Peter is our head of department. And then I want to welcome our keynote speaker, Atle, if you would mind and take the seat here. I just want to take 5 more minutes because you might have questions why we are talking about climate change and climate mobility and disaster displacement today. I believe this is a very important topic because we are always concerned about displacement, human displacement, and definitely broadly there are 2 types. One, conflict and war-induced displacement. We know mostly they are refugees, and we have a serious protection system for them, approved by the UN, the 1951 Geneva Convention, Refugee Convention, and many other protection measures are there. But at one point back in 2018, I was reading an article, and I just realized we have, in many cases, 3 times more displaced people. Mostly they are internally displaced because of disasters. Of course, everything is a disaster, but by disaster here in this particular conference, we mean natural hazard-induced disasters, but probably for today, it is more linked to hydrometeorological disasters like flooding, storms, drought, and other types of sea level rise. That really impacts the communities, and some people do really migrate. And yeah, that is our highlight because there's a serious gap understanding because in the developed world, I would say there is a pattern of identifying everything as an economic migrant. Like me, myself, I migrated from Bangladesh and came here. I am genuinely an economic migrant, but yeah, definitely you cannot categorize everyone as economic migrants. Yes, people are migrating within the country, crossing the borders for different reasons, but what is happening again in this country in terms of Rwanda flight, probably you have been reading, and also lots of people, thousands of people are now crossing the English Channel and coming, trying to enter into this country. All these things, and of course there is war ongoing in Ukraine, unfortunately. I heard 13 million people have been displaced. So it's a very complicated situation, and I believe it is not right to categorize everything or everyone as economic migrants, because they might be facing something different. Some of them, a good proportion of them are facing environmental disasters, and some of them were forced to leave their place of birth. So probably we will listen from experienced speakers today, and then definitely get ready to challenge them about whether there is climate change or not, whether there is climate migration or not, whether there is climate refugees or not. All these debates, probably this is the right platform today to clarify and move forward. Another thing, we have problems both in academia and in the policy level. In academia, unfortunately, it's been 15 years I'm here in academia, and I can see scientists are always trying to define something. First they say, okay, people are migrating. I understand they are not all economic migrants. Some of them are environmental migrants, probably. And let's try to define them, because we start with a definition. And trust me, probably after 30, 40 years, we don't even have an agreed definition of disaster itself. And you are trying to define who is a climate migrant, who is an environmental migrant, who is a refugee. Should we call them climate refugees or asylum seekers? There is a real serious debate within academia. And of course, we should not forget about climate deniers. What happened in the US, if you remember, one particular party, very powerful, they just came into power and said, no Paris Agreement, no climate change. We cannot talk about that. Withdrawing from IPCC, withdrawing from WHO. So you have this extreme viewpoint. That is a very serious threat for this kind of disciplinary approach. And this climate displacement, disaster displacement and climate migration is very emerging. But after 1 year, when you get another political party, they just reverse all those decisions, and now back in WHO, back in Paris Agreement, and they have produced a nice, I remember, White House report in 2020 they published acknowledging climate-induced disaster displacement. They have acknowledged for that, and they are now investing a lot. So we have political problems within academia, debating, no bias, this definition is wrong. We fight about the numbers. Our World Bank published 260 million climate refugees will be there in 30 years. But we always forget about the victims, the person. We sitting at UCL in England, and all the UN headquarters based in Geneva and Washington, I believe none of us are victims of disasters or disaster displacement. I believe so, but we try to formulate policy for them. I still think we ignored their sufferings. Those who are facing continuous drought, water scarcity, house being destroyed by recurrent flooding and storm, they have been ignored for long. So now, to address some of these limitations, we thought it would be a great idea to collaborate with our partner, International Displacement Monitoring Center, IDMC. They are again based in Geneva, and we are based in here, London. But I believe now it is time to work in a non-conventional way. That is our plan. Yes, conventional publications and funding applications would be there from our end. That's part of our survival. But we want to be a little bit different than others. That's our long-term planning. Bina would talk about that later. we have been talking yesterday, can we do something? Can we bring voices from the ground? Probably next year, we might bring real climate victims or a climate migrant, or we might be recording their talks in their language, translating it and display here, rather than talking again from, we talk about decolonization, that's been very popular, but the colonizers are now talking about decolonizing. So probably it's a mess, and that's, I want to bring, today's vibe here. And do please feel free to challenge the speakers. Just say, okay, is there anything really about climate change and climate migration, or is it made up? So here I want to stop and welcome Professor Peter Sammons to introduce Aya Dear and inaugurate our collaboration with IDMC. Thank you.